What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm No Sharkbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers are one day, one practice into preparation for the Baltimore Ravens, a game that can decide the AFC North in the Pittsburgh Steelers' favor. But there is a long list of injuries that we will dive into, including a name that, while technically did not practice, definitely took a step towards a return. We're diving into all that. Plus, it's Tuesday, so it's Overreaction Tuesday. And I mean, the overreactions everywhere have been so strong that I am very excited for this Overreaction Tuesday. I mean, I don't know if you have turned on national television in the last 24 hours, but the ship, it is not sinking, has sunk. It's done. There is no hope left in the city of Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room unless you go to that locker room. We'll dive into all of it. Plus, we'll answer all of your questions. I apologize that we were a couple minutes late here. I'm rocking, if you can't hear it in my voice, a little pre-Christmas sickness. That actually felt pretty badass to say, but we're getting through it and we're here to answer all your stuff. So we'll make sure that we do. Nick, it's a beautiful one here in the city of Pittsburgh. I was cracking up because I'm rocking the fever is what's got me right now. I'm totally fine except for the fever. And I'm freezing cold because of it. My wife this morning walks outside and she's like, "Why did you go and turn my car on?" I was like, "Dude, it's freezing cold outside. I was just going to make sure that your car was good." She's like, "Dude, it's 50 degrees outside. What are you talking about?" That's how I started. It hasn't gotten any less funny since then. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling great. Other than the fact that it does feel like it's a brisk fall day a week before Christmas. I mean, peel behind the curtain here a little bit. I had to walk Christmas cards to the post office today because we're rocking with one car right now. And I was told all morning, hey, make sure you bundle up by the wife, making sure that I'm okay, making sure that I don't get the pre-Christmas sickness. And yes. I'm like, you're right. So I bundle up, I get the Christmas cards in my hand. I go to walk to the post office. And by the time I'm halfway there, I text her, I said, you set me up because I'm sweating my everything off because it's 60 degrees outside right now. I didn't need a jacket. I didn't need a cap. I was good. And so I sweat a lot today walking to the post office, but hey, mission accomplished and the wife will be happy, which is biggest thing this time of year and every time of year.
That's what they say. That's what they say. Plus burn off those calories before the Christmas cookies. I mean, wins all around here today on All Steelers Talk. Good to hear. Excuse me. Let's dive into Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, and a long list of injuries that has headlined everything. We could talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. We could talk about where the Steelers' playoff chances stand, the whole nine. The only thing that it comes down to is if the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Baltimore Ravens, their season is essentially chilling. They're fine. They have the AFC North crown. They're trying to stay healthy heading into the playoffs. They're not going to beat or catch the Buffalo Bills. They're not going to catch the Kansas City Chiefs. They would need both teams to lose pretty dramatically to teams that are, well, not that good. And if the Kansas City Chiefs win in week 16, even with Carson Wentz, I mean, they have put themselves in a position where the Steelers cannot catch them or the Buffalo Bills before the end of the year. So I believe I might be wrong there. Things would have to get pretty dramatic. The Bills would have to lose to some bad teams. Still, injuries are the talk of the town right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers are dealing with George Pickens, Justin Fields, TJ Watt, Larry Ogunjobi, Deshaun Elliott, Dante Jackson, so on and so forth as they prepare for week 16 against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll start with the good news. George Pickens caught some passes today from tennis balls, but he caught some passes today, did a little bit of individual. The Pittsburgh Steelers listed him as did not participate in practice to start the week, but still, I saw it with my own two eyes. There was plenty of video out there that everybody saw with their own two eyes where you saw George Pickens doing a little bit during the Pittsburgh Steelers week 16 preparation, had a jersey on, which is the other big thing. I mean, if a guy's not practicing, chances are he's just hanging out in street clothes. And George Pickens, even in a walkthrough, showing up with a jersey and doing a little bit here, a little bit there, I think is is good news. Does that change anything for you? Because at this point, coming into it, we were talking George Pickens ain't going to play. And Mike Tomlin left the door open for everybody, but we didn't expect anything to happen when it came to names like George, like TJ Watt. We'll dive into the rest of them here in a second because the list is much longer than I anticipated. Does George catching tennis balls before practice today change your mind about his availability against the Ravens?
No, because I initially thought that he wasn't going to be ready to go for this Ravens game. And the fact that while it's nice that he did more than he did last week, right? He didn't just stand there. He still didn't participate. He was still considered a do not practice on the injury report by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So no, I didn't think he was going to play coming into this week. And obviously today was a big day. Where is that starting point? And it's nice that it's further along than it was last week, but yes. I still think the fact that this is a short week, that is technically a Wednesday practice and he's still has that DNP designation, I think that just basically confirms to me that he's likely not going to be ready unless he takes some massive steps here in the next day or two.
I mean, I agree. I think it, if anything, kind of opens the process of George is getting ready to play if the Pittsburgh Steelers need him. And they don't really need him right now. There's no desperation game. That's the big thing. If you turn on any of the national media, if you go to our YouTube clips channel, because my gosh, dude, that's the worst part is the Tuesday morning hangover of you're scrolling through your YouTube, because I don't go on TikTok, so I do the YouTube shorts and I'll catch hours and I go, oh my gosh, no, you drama queen, what are you doing? If you listen to all that, the Pittsburgh Steelers are in desperation time. But if you listen to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're chilling. They have no sense of urgency at this point. They just want to beat the Baltimore Ravens. They understand how big of a matchup that is, but they want to get to the playoffs. They want to win the AFC North, and they understand that this is not the only way that they can do so this season. I believe, just like you said, it's an opportunity where maybe things progress pretty rapidly over the next 2 days, but I doubt that they do, and they would have to in order for George to play. But the did not practice, if it was limited, I think my mind would have been changed. I think I would have had a different outlook on George possibly playing against Baltimore. But the fact that he did not practice means chances are they're still being pretty cautious with it. At the same time, excuse me, I apologize. I keep trying to hold these bad boys in. Justin Fields, abdominal. Patrick Queen, rest day. George Pickens, Deshaun Elliott, hamstring. Dante Jackson, back. TJ Watt, ankle, who was seen in a pretty big brace. And Larry Ogunjobi, groin, also did not practice during the Pittsburgh Steelers walkthrough. Indicates to me Deshaun Elliott is still not there and isn't anywhere close. Larry Ogunjobi is not there and is not anywhere close. Justin Fields, that's the big one in my eyes that is very alarming, because you could replace Dante Jackson with a James Pierre and a Corey Trice. And yes, it's a step back, but I think I have a little bit more confidence than most people do in those two on defense. DeMonte KZ, if you're going to put your faith in anybody, him and Cam Sutton is going to be the ones to replace Deshaun Elliott. Although, I mean, that's a big one here. That's a big one. I think that was the biggest one last week, even bigger than George Pickens. To have all those names, and I doubt Justin plays as well. I mean, does your mindset change about Baltimore? Where do you stand currently? How, or if any, loud are the alarms going off in your head?
Yeah, the good thing is the one player that potentially could come back being Larry Ogunjobi. He never practices, so the fact that he was limited at all tells me, hey, maybe he is actually on the right path, because typically he doesn't practice at all, even when he is healthy. So that is a nice little silver lining, but outside of that, it's not a great look for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's a lot of key injuries in key areas, right? Two players in your secondary, one being Dante Jackson, one being Deshaun Elliott. You lose them, it's massive. A massive loss, obviously, in TJ Watt, because the Steelers are 1-11 all time when TJ doesn't play. So when I look at this Saturday, yes, that tells me that maybe not the 6.5, which is the line, is actually appropriate, but the Steelers undoubtedly go into that game as the underdog in my eyes. Whereas before, I kind of looked at this game as a push, because I always look at Steelers Ravens as hey, it is a coin flip no matter the venue. But with all of these players missed, I think the Ravens should be the favorite now, because the Steelers are shorthanded, especially on that defensive side of the ball, which sets the tone for the Steelers week in and week out.
I agree. And I think on the offensive side of the ball, if you're not going to have George, I think Justin was a key. Justin was a key they did not utilize enough against Philly. I think maybe they were planning to, although they didn't much in the first half before the injury, and I think that was weird. But that was the thing for me is put your athletic quarterback out there and say, if there's nobody to throw the ball to, at least Justin could run around and try to make something happen. And against Baltimore, that's what you're looking for is, okay, just control the clock. Just control this game as much as you can. Set Chris Boswell up to win it again, because that's fine. You don't care how you're doing it as long as you're doing it. I think Justin being out is actually bigger than people will recognize because you are without George Pickens, because your running game is so weak. And because of it, I mean, you need all options, all hands on deck. And you saw, I mean, Russell Wilson ran for 13 yards against the Eagles, and in moments was like, okay, that's what you need. You need a quarterback that's going to take off. Justin would be the guy that takes off. And I think that's a missing link here that the Pittsburgh Steelers will want to have against these teams like Baltimore and Kansas City and even Cincinnati, if that comes down to it. And I don't know how severe the abdominal injury is, but it does not look good. Then on the defensive side of the ball, just like you said, without all these guys, I mean, if you get Larry O back, huge, because that takes a lot of pressure off of Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith and Preston Smith. But you're going to want Deshaun Elliott in a game where you have to stop Derrick Henry. You're desperately going to want Deshaun Elliott in a game where you're going to want to stop or have to stop Derrick Henry. You're going to want Dante Jackson out there. And it's just the missing pieces. They had everybody, except for Alex Highsmith, I believe, against Baltimore the first time. And if you don't have everybody, I mean, are you edging out an 18-16 win over Baltimore where Chris Boswell does it all? I don't know. I think that's a massive question, one that we will get answered eventually, but it's not a good start for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll say this. It being a walkthrough should give everybody some hope that things change tomorrow and the day after, because it just simply means that the Pittsburgh Steelers are taking it very easy as is. So tomorrow, with a full practice, we'll see who's out there, if anybody takes a step forward, and where the Pittsburgh Steelers go from there. All right. That's the injury news for today. It's Tuesday. We're diving into it. I'm excited for this one. If you have not paid attention to anybody over the last 24 hours, if you've just said the Pittsburgh Steelers have lost, I'm going under my rock, we're going to live here all week, awesome. Good for you, my friend. Good for you. But if you have tuned in anywhere, you know that the Pittsburgh Steelers ship has sunk. It's over. Season done, dude. Season done. Well, we're going to see how done it is. It's Tuesday. We're diving into Overreaction Tuesday.
It's a fine line between, drinking wine and squashing grapes, as we say in this business, and sometimes it's very subtle.
Shout out our boy. All right. Hit me with it. Week 16, Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens. Overreaction Tuesday starts now.
When it comes to overreactions, is there any position that we overreact to as a nation more than the quarterback position in the National Football League? Of course not. Of course not. So with that, that's how we're going to kick off this edition of Overreaction Tuesday. Russell Wilson needs, in all caps, needs to win the AFC North to secure his role on the Steelers roster in 2025.
Ooh, who you asking? You asking me or you asking Mike Tomlin?
I'm asking you right now.
If it's me, if I'm making the decisions, I don't think that's an overreaction at all. I'm looking at it going, what did you do for us? Nothing. You won 10 games. Everybody predicted the Steelers to win 10 games. That's where the Steelers were supposed to be. They were supposed to win 10 games this season. And if you asked a lot of people, the Steelers were supposed to win 10 games right up until where they won 10 games. Maybe one extra one against Cincinnati, depending on how you felt about there. And I apologize for my camera here. Let's see if we could flip it around. We cannot. So we're just rocking with it. I'm telling you, the Pittsburgh Steelers are exactly where everybody predicted them to be in June, in July, in August. They are not exceeding it. I mean, go back. Go look at our record prediction. We haven't beaten Philly. We haven't beaten Kansas City. We haven't beaten Baltimore the second time or Cincinnati the second time. This is where it was. They were 10-4 right here. I mean, Russell Wilson has not exceeded any expectations to this point. And with bad games, when you don't have a top wide receiver, the rule of thumb, what we said when he came out here in the beginning, when Mike Tomlin made the switch the first time, it was all great quarterbacks make average wide receivers good. Well, Russell Wilson made average wide receivers look below average against the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know about that one, my friend. I'm going, if you ask me, that is not an overreaction. If you ask Mike Tomlin, I think that contract's already been signed.
Let's jump over to the next one, and the same backfield, but a different position. Najee Harris's fumble last week is the excuse the Steelers needed to make Jaylen Warren the primary running back for the rest of the season.
That's also not an overreaction. I don't know if it's good or bad when we agree to start off this run here, but that is not an overreaction. That is what the Steelers should do. It's what they should have done the last 3 weeks. I mean, the magic has run off. That's where we are. Arthur Smith's offense is not working with Najee Harris right now. I don't know if it works with Jaylen Warren. I have no idea. But it's not working with the option that they have. And because of that, you got to change it up. You got to try something. The Steelers already know Jalen's their guy next season. It's crazy if he's not. Why would you not try it right now? I don't think that's an overreaction either. I mean, why would it be? Why would the Steelers not try something new when they got 56 rushing yards against the Philadelphia Eagles? 56, Nick. 13 of those were Russell Wilson. That means running backs combined for 43 yards against Philadelphia in a game where you needed your running game to win that game because you didn't have George Pickens. I'm sorry. It's time. I agree. That is the excuse they need. That's also not an overreaction.
All right, here's a fun one for you. Looking at the other side of this rivalry, the Baltimore Ravens and Deontay Johnson have agreed to separate for the time being, but that wasn't a statement of release. The Baltimore Ravens are not releasing Deontay Johnson because they don't want the Steelers to sign him. Overreaction or not?
I don't think we're 3 for 3 right now. I don't think that's an overreaction either. I mean, the NFL is conspiracy theory out the wazoo. They are, if you are nervous, you are not making moves. Why would they not want him here? You suspend him for a game, okay? He wasn't in your game plan before that. Now you're excusing him for a week? Why? Why not just release him? Why not suspend him? I understand that you want to punish him, but you only suspended him one game. You didn't do anything else. If you wanted to really, really hurt him, suspend him for 3 games. Suspend him for the rest of the season like the 49ers did with Tavondre Campbell. I mean, why not do that? Instead, they said we're suspending him for 1 game. Now we're excusing him for the week, and John Harbaugh won't answer any questions about it. If you go back and watch the press conference, he's asked about it twice. Twice he says, yeah, I'm just focused on the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. What? I mean, I believe so 100%. Not because Deontay is going to come in here and play for the Steelers. I don't think that's it. I don't think that's what makes them nervous. I think it's because, and maybe I'm getting a little bit too conspiracy theory here, but I've covered the NFL for a long time. I know how real these things are. Trust me, I know how real these things are. I think it's because they don't want Deontay to go sign a real cheap deal in Pittsburgh, show up there on Thursday, and give them all their secrets offensively so that they got to change their complete offensive game plan against Pittsburgh. And if you keep them around, you're going to do it. You're going to be able to see them all week long. You want to know what I think happens? And stamp this if anybody wants to challenge me come Monday. I think they release him on Friday. I think they waive him on Friday at 4:00 so that he clears waivers on Monday, isn't able to talk to anybody until then, and does not have the opportunity to give the Pittsburgh Steelers their game plan.
Man, you're deep in conspiracy theory territory with that one. I mean, it would make sense, not to mention the fact that it makes sense that the Steelers would go sign Deontay Johnson anyway, potentially.
Yeah.
Because that just feels like a Steelers thing to do. It feels like a Mike Tomlin thing to do, despite the fact that I don't want to say ran him out of town, but I mean, a 1-for-1 trade is essentially saying we value that player more than we value you.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like they ran him out of town, but it does feel like something where they would say, well, we're desperate now. Better the evil we know than the evil we don't, which is going into the playoffs or going into these last couple of weeks with George Pickens on the sideline and not knowing if anybody else is going to step up. But I still very, very deep in conspiracy theory territory there.
The NFL, man, it's way more conspiracy theory than anybody wants to admit. And it is, there's a reason that if you go to UPMC Rooney Sports Complex and you go in the back, there are 100-foot black tarps hung right in the air. Why? I mean, you tell me.
Bill
you
Belichick,
tell me, my friend. Bill Belichick. I was on the elevator with a Ravens guy decked in Ravens stuff in Philadelphia. I said, what are you doing here? He said, oh, there's like a dozen of us here. So, all right. Sounds good. Sounds good.
I got one more, and then we got a couple from the listeners, but let's go to my last one first. The Steelers have the least momentum of any current playoff team in the AFC.
Okay, so those teams. This is an overreaction. I'll get to it because the one just popped in my head. The Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was an overtime win against the Browns, but they still won. They're above them. The Buffalo Bills are the hottest team in football right now. Who else we got? The Baltimore Ravens just beat the Giants. Okay, so they have momentum more than the Steelers do. The Denver Broncos, red hot right now. Red hot. Houston Texans are winning games. Who else is in there?
The Denver Broncos are the last one.
No.
Or sorry, not the Denver Broncos, the Chargers.
The Los Angeles Chargers are not. They are actually so concerningly not hot right now that I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make playoffs at all. That's where we are. I mean, Indianapolis and Miami's just got to win out, and LA's got to lose out, but they're looking more like a team that could lose out than win out where we stand currently. I would say the Steelers are easily behind the Chargers on this one. They're 2, but they're behind the Chargers for sure.
I mean, that's still not a great place to be. The Chargers, sometimes they charge you, even with a Harbaugh at the helm. But to 100%. Be the next team right there next to them, it's not a safe spot to be, even if you're the number 3 seed in the Pittsburgh Steelers right now.
Agreed. And where the Steelers want to go, I mean, the momentum in Kansas City and Buffalo right now is red hot. And it's not the team that's the best. It's the team that's the hottest heading into the postseason.
Well, we got a couple listener overreactions that were submitted earlier today. Let's start with Sajan, who says the Steelers beat the Ravens this week. Then they sit all their starters for the remainder of the season to avoid any injuries. Meanwhile, Kyle Allen will beat both the Chiefs and the Bengals.
Why not? If the Chiefs win this week, they'd have to win one more game to get into the postseason. That's what they would, to claim the one seed. That's what they would have to do. I don't know who they play this week, but I don't believe it's anybody real vicious. If they beat them, why wouldn't you take that to, who is it?
The Texans.
Nah. It's a big one.
Yeah, it's there.
It's a big one. Patrick Mahomes wins that game. I mean, maybe. I would say maybe. Kyle Allen would be awesome. I think it's an overreaction because who's Kyle Allen throwing the football to? It's Scotty Miller and Ben Skoranek. And that's it. Mike Williams. That might be a boost, to be honest. That might be a boost for him. I would say Michael Pruitt is the guy catching at tight end. I would go that's an overreaction. Kyle Allen, I like Kyle Allen. He wouldn't even have a weapon to throw the football to. Cordero Patterson is going to be his running back. I mean, John LeGlue is going to come in here and play tackle. It could get real bad real fast. Real fast.
Speaking of real bad real fast, that is also the Bengals defense in week 18. So you never know. Not to mention, listen, Kyle Allen, perfect completion percentage this year.
That's true. Great looking pass
on his name.
Great looking pass. Maybe you beat Cincinnati. I got a hard time believing the land of 33-year-old misfit toys is beating the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas.
You never know. Maybe it's a miracle on Acrisure Stadium in the Candy Cane games is what the NFL
Could you imagine if everybody showed up to the Christmas game, bought tickets, missed Christmas with their families for Kyle Allen to play quarterback?
Against Carson Wentz.
Against Carson Wentz. Could you imagine? The Netflix would lose billions on that game.
Let's go over to Plausible Deniability, who says the Pittsburgh Steelers are no different than the Pittsburgh Steelers of the last several years, we will be a one and done in the playoffs, and the cycle continues for the foreseeable future. This is our inescapable destiny.
I don't know about inescapable. That might make it an overreaction. If you're just going to get down to the nitty gritty of these things, unescapable, like that might be the overreaction. But if you ask me today, if the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go into Houston or play Houston and win, I don't know. I don't know. If they somehow fall out of this and they got to play in Houston, I don't know. I don't know. If they lose all three, they find themselves in a situation where they're below one of these teams and they got to go to Buffalo. I don't know, man. I don't know. Could get real bad real fast. Baltimore is the same way. I would, I do think the Steelers are still a favorite to win a playoff game. I do. I still think that the road is on their side to win a playoff game. I don't know how strongly I view them as a Super Bowl contender where we sit today, but I do still think that they are destined to win a playoff game because I do think they beat the Chargers. I do think they beat Houston. I do think they beat Denver. And if for some reason Indianapolis gets in there, I think they beat Indianapolis too. So I would say, unless you got to play Baltimore, that could change things. But I would say right now, destiny is making this an overreaction.
All righty, let's go over to Vibin' with the Dog. Says Russell Wilson isn't as good as fans think he is and has skated by because of sorry defenses like the Jets, the Giants, the Ravens, the Browns, and the Bengals, and that will make the Steelers, once again, one and done in this year's playoffs.
Whew. Whew. I would say overreaction. I don't know if you've watched Baltimore's defense, but it's gotten good since that Pittsburgh Steelers game. I don't know if you've watched Cleveland this year, but their defense has also had some moments where you're feeling pretty good about it. Cincinnati's is terrible. The Giants is terrible. The Jets are terrible. I get it. But I'm not gonna sit here and say we have been flabbergasted, bamboozled, one would say, by Russell Wilson. I'll just say that without George Pickens against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the hottest team in football outside of the Bills, they did not look good. And I don't know what anybody expected, but I didn't expect them to look good. That's why it was the first time this season I picked them to lose. That's why every time I was in an Uber in Philadelphia, I saved myself probably getting dropped off 15 blocks from where I was supposed to be by saying, yeah, man, I think Philly might have this one. Why? Because Philadelphia is red hot, man. They are just a team that looks like a Super Bowl team, and the Steelers look like a team that are still trying to figure it out and get beat up in the process. So I would say that's an overreaction. I don't think we've been fooled. Russ looks good, really good at times. He's doing a lot of good things. He needs some weapons. And I would say we were fooled by the Mike Williams belief if we're going to be fooled by anything.
Let's go over to the live chat here with Sigtor, who says, overreaction, Roman Wilson was a wasted draft pick.
What are we doing here? Why? Why would he be in a wasted draft? The Roman Wilson thing blows my mind. And I get it. This is an overreaction. And it's Overreaction Tuesday. Roman Wilson's been hurt all season long. You can't predict injuries. You don't get to decide if injuries make you good or not. If he never plays in the NFL, yeah, wasted draft pick. But one season where he's dealt with injuries all year long is not the reason he's a wasted draft pick. I mean, he just got bad luck. We saying Logan Lee and Ryan Watts, Calvin Austin 2 years ago, all wasted draft picks? No, that's not what we do here. Kenny Pickett was a wasted draft pick. Okay? That's a wasted draft pick. Kendrick Green was a wasted draft pick. Kevin Dotson was a wasted draft pick. Devin Bush was a wasted draft pick. Roman Wilson, and I get it, this is an overreaction, and it is by far our biggest of the day, is just a rookie who's hurt. That's all he is. Overreaction.
I was about to say, if you're going to say Roman Wilson was a wasted pick, then you have to keep that same energy for Troy Fautanu, which I don't agree with either
wasted pick.
But especially because Troy against Denver looked phenomenal. and then of course gets hurt in practice the next week. So I don't think that you could label anybody first and foremost, even if they play and struggle. You cannot claim somebody is a wasted pick after their rookie season. There's people doing that about Caleb Williams. You have to wait because players develop. That's part of the NFL. College football is no longer a developmental sport. It is a win now sport. NFL, first couple of years, some of these players have to develop. Some of them don't. Some of them show up like Jamar Chase, but that is certainly the exception and not the rule. Players, they need to develop, and you certainly can't call somebody a wasted pick just because they were injured.
Agreed. Overreaction.
Let's go to this one here from Tyler B, who says, overreaction. Peyton Wilson should start over E-Rob strictly based off of his coverage skills.
Depends on the team. Philadelphia, it didn't make sense for Peyton Wilson to be out there. You know, I get it that E-Rob got taken advantage of a couple of times, but that's Philadelphia is a running football team. They've always been a running football team. So you'd have to imagine they were going to run against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It just depends on the team. Kansas City, you start Peyton Wilson or you play Peyton Wilson more. Baltimore, you play E-Rob a lot more. It just depends on the personnel and the team you're playing. I would say overreaction simply because it's not about getting beat. It's about the Steelers being in situations where you got to take advantage of the team that you're playing. E-Rob is really good against teams like the Eagles should be. The Eagles decided they were just going to throw the ball all over the place because A.J. Brown was crying about it.
Well, that is a wrap for Overreaction Tuesday.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys. That was a blast. We had some, I thought we were going to go straight under reactions on those ones, but I'm glad that we turned it around. With that said, we're going to finish off the show the way we do every single day by answering all of your questions. So make sure that you toss them all in the chat. We'll get to them before we head out of here. Nick, I'm going to toss it to you. What do we got?
I don't think we can go anywhere except for this question to start things off. Marlon Lewis wants to know, was that game considered a Kenny Pickett revenge game?
100%. 100%. If you get interviewed after a game, it is a revenge game. You have won it. Shout out Kenny Pickett, man. Shout out Kenny Pickett. 1-0 against Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he's able to say that. He's able to say that. You want to know who wasn't? Mitch Trubisky was 0-1 against the Buffalo Bills. So it is. It's Kenny Pickett revenge game.
Revenge. I was gonna say, few do it better than Clipboard Kenny. He was on fire on Sunday.
Killing it, dude. Killing it. Absolutely dominated Jalen Hurts being ready to throw that football.
Let's jump over to Cody Silva, who says, why do we struggle so much on first and second down? I've saw somewhere that we are dead last, and in those downs, we average 3.2 yards.
Yeah, it's because they're very predictable. I mean, the Steelers' first down running play is our second down running plays is every single play. Like, and half of the time it's pitches. It's crazy. That's why the Steelers are very unpredictable. It goes with like the slow starts and everything else. The Steelers are a team that their script, they stick to it. They don't change it. It's the same week to week to week. I don't understand why they don't change it, but that's who the Steelers are. That's why they're just so predictable when it comes to those early downs. I mean, go watch it. Go watch it against Baltimore. I bet you second down, they run the football 99% of the time.
Let's go over to Marlon again, who says, has this season turned out about how you expected?
Yep. Yeah, pretty spot on, actually. I mean, I was looking back at it like late last night. I was up at like 3 a.m, just thinking about things. One of the things I was thinking about is the Pittsburgh Steelers and today's show and how the Steelers season is here. This is what we saw coming. We saw an absolutely dominant start. They won games that they shouldn't have, and they lost games that they should have or shouldn't have. But this is where we saw them. We saw them at 10-4 heading into Baltimore with 3 brutal losses coming and possibly a 4th against Cincinnati. I would say the only difference is you didn't see the Jets being bad. And maybe you didn't see them beating Atlanta week 1. I would say those are the only 2 differences. Besides that, I mean, you could go back and look at our record predictions. They're pretty spot on at this point in the season.
Yeah, you had them at 11-6, which right now looks real good as a prediction. I had them at 10-7, and I didn't have them at this point of the season being 10-4 and then losing out the last three. But right now, if they finish the way that it feels like they might finish, we're both going to be pretty close. I wouldn't say that it's gone how I expected, because I didn't expect Justin Fields to start the first 6 weeks, go 4-2, and then get benched in the meantime. So I think some of the minutia of the season has not gone as expected, but all in all, the overall overarching record wise, I think it's gone as most people would expect, with them being a better team than most people gave them credit for, but still having to battle for everything that they get late in the season.
I would say that's the only difference, and you're spot on there. Is I didn't expect the roller coaster ride that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been thrown through, but record wise, yeah, we're pretty close to what we expected.
Let's jump over to Jeff Cole, who has an interesting question here about Tomlin, saying he filed for a formal complaint or request for review of the officials and the blown calls. What does that do for the Steelers? Does it keep from fines, or like in hockey, just the hope of getting calls our way in the future?
A little bit of both. It does. It should protect Calvin from fines, which is huge because that's ridiculous. But it also, like, the Steelers and the players are at this point like pretty spot on with their complaints about how the NFL has a vendetta against them. George said it yesterday again. Deshaun Elliott said it this season. Everybody, Joey Porter said it after the game. Calvin Austin said it after the game. Like, that's where the Steelers are. Is it's very clear that these refs are calling games one-sided, and very much so against the Steelers. I don't know why, but that is what's happening. And Tomlin filing a formal complaint just kind of lets everybody know, like, hey, you got to play. You got to be better. You got to be better. Hopefully it does avoid fines for Calvin Austin. But it's really just a review of the officials. Nothing will change, obviously. That's the NFL is still always going to suck when it comes to officiating. But that is what it means.
Let's go over to Maze Rage, who says, why is Jaylen Warren continuously underutilized? He has better vision and explosiveness than Najee Harris. Look at the last Browns game. On 7 fewer carries, he only had 6 fewer yards.
I agree. I think we all agree. I don't know. I would say the craziest part is just run the football all the time if you're the Steelers. It doesn't have to do anything with playing Najee Harris or Jalen Moore, or Najee less and Jalen Moore. Just run the football all the time. Become a running football team and run it well. Don't call stupid pitches. Don't put Cordero Patterson out there. Just run the damn ball. And if you do that, think about how much better the offense is when the Steelers offense is running the football well. I mean, they're great. And you have Zach Frazier, you have Broderick Jones, you have Mason McCormick and Isaac Seumalo, who strive in that area. Run the football. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think it's a matter of using him more than Najee. I think it's a matter of, why are you not using both of these guys 15 plus times a game to try and build your offense that way?
Let's go over to another Noah Thomas, who says, considering the injuries in the first game, what adjustments to the offensive game plan / scheme do you see for this game? Because they can't just roll with the usual play sheet, correct?
I mean, we could sit here and act as if they should make adjustments, and they will make adjustments, but they won't. There won't be any adjustments. It'll be the same team, the same play, the same scheme. They'll just do it again and hope for better results, because that's what they've done all season long. It's been the same stuff all season long. Just sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but nothing's changed. The Steelers haven't changed anything. So I don't imagine anything changing. What would I do? I would just run it up the gut every single time. Make Michael Thomas, make Justin Nabuke beat you. Like, that's what I would do. Say, hey, look, you got to stop us. Okay, great. You know, if you could do it, perfect. But this is not a Russell Wilson go win us this game. This is a Najee Harris and Jalen Warren go win us this game. That's what I would do if I was the Steelers. I don't expect that to happen, though.
Leroy wants to know, what are the odds that they move Broderick Jones back to the left tackle spot and Troy Fautanu to right to begin next season?
Yeah, I would say pretty close to 100. That's what I would imagine that they do. I like Dan Moore so much as both a player and a person. He is hands down my favorite human being in the locker room. You could ask anybody in the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. They will tell you the exact same thing. He is the best human in that locker room. Works harder than anybody. I would love to see Dan Moore back here, but I think he's going to get paid, and I'm excited for him to get paid. But if I had to guess, Broderick goes to left tackle, Troy stays at right.
Let's go over to Grayson, who says, hey, Nick and Noah, how much will the Steelers integrate Mike Williams, considering George Pickens will be out multiple weeks now?
I would say 0. My expectation for Mike Williams at this point is none. They're not going to see him. They're not going to utilize him. I mean, Jerry Dulac said yesterday or maybe today that it's a foregone conclusion that Mike Williams is no longer a number 2 wide receiver and probably not even a number 3. So I don't think that he should be playing all the time, but he should definitely be playing more. But the Steelers aren't going to utilize him. I don't think Mike Williams sees the field. That's where I'm at. Is Mike Williams is not part of this offense moving forward.
Let's jump over to Gumpez. If we're one and done in the playoffs, as we've talked about being potentially the case on multiple occasions in this show, do you think Omar makes a splash in free agency or waits until the draft to go grab a wide receiver?
I think it depends. I could see T. Higgins making his way to Pittsburgh. I could see that being the splash the Steelers go out and get. Devontae Adams is another name to watch, but I could see the NFL draft. I could see the Steelers saying, let's go out and get somebody in the first or the second round, see who's available out there. But I could see free agency. If there are names, which there will be names, I don't think Omar Khan and company take a chance by going into the NFL draft. I would imagine that they try to sign somebody. T. Higgins tops my list easily. Christian Kirk is also on that list as well. Pretty high up.
Let's jump over to Ricky, who says, I think we should pick up Odell Beckham Jr., even if he's not who he used to be. He demands more attention than a guy like Van Jefferson, but what do you think?
I mean, if you've watched this show, you know what I think. You also know that Nick thinks completely differently on this front. I look at it and say, if Mike Williams ain't it, if Van Jefferson ain't it, why not just sign anybody for $200,000? Who cares? Who cares? That's how I look at it. I'd sign anybody off the street right now to try to fix this thing. But Nick has said, don't do it. So
listen, Odell has been available since Monday. It's not just the Steelers that would like to have a dynamic playmaker on the outside to add to the end of the season. They'd love to have one drop at the bottom of the Christmas tree, but Odell is not that anymore. He's not. And if he was, he'd be signed by now. He would be signed by now. So I think that when you see the rest of the league ignoring it, it tells you that the Steelers probably follow suit and believe that Odell Beckham Jr. is just not worth it at this point to go out and get him, even when they're depleted as much as they are at the wide receiver position.
I disagree, man. I think I'm going out to get anybody. Now, let me ask this. Where would there be a tier? Because I'm not going to ask for a player name, but would there be a tier where you go, no, okay, that guy's out there, might as well take a chance on him? Like, would you sign Deontay?
Deontay's a tough one simply because of his history with the organization. But if that caliber of wide receiver comes out, then I go for him. I'm going with anybody that doesn't have their knees blown out and is a third wide receiver caliber or higher. That's what I'm looking for from the Steelers. That guy's just not available on the market right now. Deontay would be, but again, it gets muddied because of his history with the Steelers and whether or not they're willing to take on a headache that is Deontay Johnson for the last couple of weeks of the season.
Adam Thielen.
Yes, undoubtedly. Give me Adam Thielen. If he's available, give me Adam Thielen.
I think there's a possibility that by the end of the season, he's saying, screw it, cut me so that I could go try to compete for a Super Bowl.
I mean, I don't know how much that would work.
I don't know how much it would work either, but at this point, what's Carolina doing? And Adam Thielen's 33 years old. He's got to be thinking playoffs. He's been screwed out of the playoffs too many times.
Yeah, but at the same time, the Panthers as an organization, are they really going to be like, yeah, let's cut you? Because that's setting a precedent that anybody on an expiring contract can just be gone because all they have to do is ask and we'll let them go. I mean, it's good. It shows that you care about your players, but I just don't think that's a precedent that any NFL franchise is going to set.
I think at some point we'll get to there. I do think that at some point the NFL will get, not in Pittsburgh, but at some point everybody will get kind of soft.
Let's jump over to James, who says, bring a Landon Roberts over to the offensive side of the football. Put him in as the lead blocker for Justin Fields, Najee, and Jalen. Do you think a Landon Roberts would be a good lead blocker? And is there anybody else on the defense that you would like to see get some spot usage on the offensive side of the ball?
You could go and Google it right now. Landon Roberts fullback tape. There is some of them. There's definitely some of them. He played fullback at New England, and he scored a couple touchdowns, or a touchdown at least, in New England. I would do it. He would be the one. Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton would be awesome. Would be so awesome, actually. Those would be my three. A Landon, Cam, because it would be so awesome. And Keanu Benton would be my three to say, screw it, just hit somebody. Just hit somebody.
Now, we talked a little bit about Troy Fautanu earlier in the episode, but X Concepts wants to know, do you think Khan should have picked up Brian Thomas Jr. over Troy Fautanu? I know it's too early to tell, but still.
No, I think it is way too early to tell. I also think that if Troy Fautanu didn't have the knee issues, he would have been way higher in the NFL draft. That being said, you took a guy with knee issues, and that's alarming. So I'm not going to say yes to this. I think they should have taken a wide receiver earlier than the third round? 100%. 100%. But we have no baseline to go off of for Troy Fautanu. And it's not like you're getting rid of Zach Frazier. That dude's a monster. So I would say it's really tough to tell. Right now, we'll know next year, I guess, if Troy is good to go. But Troy's upside is massive. Massive. If they were talking again, if he didn't have the red flags with the knee, he's a top 10, top 15 pick in this draft. So you took a guy with risks, but the upside is definitely there.
You know, what else muddies this water is the fact that Roman Wilson didn't get to play. If Roman Wilson plays, and I'm not saying Brian Thomas is about to hit 1,000 yards, has 8 touchdowns on the season. He's had a great rookie year despite playing for a bad Jacksonville team. But if Roman Wilson plays this season and has 600, 700 yards, you're probably not as concerned because you got a good wide receiver and you got potentially your right tackle of the future. Whereas both of them being out, it's easy to sit there and point blame and say, well, this would have been better in hindsight. This would have been better in hindsight. But at the end of the day, the plan was, hey, we're going to take potentially our future pillar of an offensive line in the first round, and then we're going to get somebody that we believe is great value in the third round at the wide receiver position. Unfortunately, neither of them have had the opportunity to kind of display that, and that plan hasn't been able to play out due to injuries. There's time. I understand that it's a what have you done for me lately league, but let these young kids get onto the field and show what they're worth before you start saying it's a wasted draft pick in the first, third, sixth, or even seventh round.
I agree. I think only time will tell. Also, sophomore slumps are a real thing in the NFL. So what happens next season with both Brian Thomas when his team is going through a complete rebuild, and Troy Fautanu when he has an offensive line around him because that's the thing, dude. If the Steelers' offensive line for the next 5 years, 6 years has their pieces together, that's more valuable than any wide receiver you could bring in the National Football League. And you could ask any player in the league, they would agree with that.
Let's jump over to Ricky Huggins. Appreciate you, Ricky. Says, do you think Tomlin should give up his ego and bring in Ben as a fourth quarter clock manager?
Ben was okay. So I love Ben. I thought Ben was fantastic. He's not going to be like the fourth quarter 2-minute drill specialist. He did all that on the fly out there. It's a completely different world doing it. Now, that being said, Mike Tomlin is the worst clock management coach in the NFL. He's been for a long time. So I would bring in anybody to try and improve that. But I mean, I would take away almost 90% of in-game operations from Mike Tomlin and just say, you are Nick Sirianni. It worked in Philadelphia. You are just there to motivate guys and keep things moving.
Let's finish it off with Eddie the Great, who checks in and says, afternoon, boys. Christmas Eve midnight or Christmas Day? When are you opening gifts?
I am not awake at Christmas
I
Eve
was about
midnight.
to say, Christmas Eve midnight. 365 days a year. I am not awake at midnight unless there are special circumstances, aka a very good game.
Yeah, no, even a very good game. Chances are I'm waking up at like 2 in the morning on my couch going,
oh, look,
who won?
Highlights are on.
Yeah. That's exactly what, or like 60 Minutes is playing, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, turn it off. Yeah, that's Christmas Day, which this year My wife will be waking up as if we do have children because I'm going to have to be at the stadium by like 9:30. So I'll be like, get out of bed. We got to open presents before I leave. So it'll be a solid 7 a.m. Wake up call for good old Jillian Strackbine. She will not be happy about it.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to we're freaking out again. We got up. All right. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.